I tore open the envelope like it was a treasure chest. My hands shook. My breath caught. Mom, Dad, I whispered, my voice barely above a heartbeat. They leaned in, their eyes wide, faces glowing. You got it? Dad asked, voice tight with emotion. I nodded, tears spilling over. The scholarship. I got it. Mom grabbed me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. Oh, my baby. All those late nights, all that hard work, you did it. I laughed through my tears. I can still believe it. All the hours, all the sacrifices, they paid off. Dad Sep's hand rested on my shoulder. You star unstoppable. You know that. I felt it, pride swelling like a wave ready to crash over me. I felt untouchable. For a moment, nothing could go wrong. Nothing. Then the door slammed. Ayan, my cousin, that smug grin, like he already knew how to ruin everything. Hey, guess who got the scholarship? His voice was teasing, dripping with mockery. I blinked. Wait? What? Mom and Dad stiffened. I felt the air thicken, the room tilt. I did, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Funny, right? Somehow magically it slips mine. I froze. My hands fell to my sides. But, you worked hard? Yeah, so did I. He laughed. Not a good laugh, the kind that cuts. I couldn't breathe. My stomach dropped. The pride, the joy, the sense of victory, it all cracked. Dad opened his mouth, then closed it. Mom's hand went to her lips. Their hesitation burned hotter than any insult. I don't understand, I said, voice trembling. How can this happen? I earned this. Ian shrugged, that infuriating cocky tilt of his head. Guess I stem just luckier, or better connected. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My world spun, my scholarship, my dream, gone, just handed over to him. Mom, Dad, tell me this isn't real. My voice cracked, a raw edge slicing through the room. Mom shook her head, but she wouldn't speak. Dad looked at me, guilt flickering in his eyes, torn between what was fair and family. Abdul? Ayan, maybe we should. Mom started. No. I cut her off, a jagged edge in my tone. No, this was mine. Mine. And he just took it? Ayan smirked, leaning closer, savoring the hurt on my face. Relax, it's just a scholarship. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic? I felt my chest tighten, my hands balled into fists. You don't get it. I snapped. I worked for this every night. Every tear, every failed attempt. And you just waltz in and take it like it's a gift from God. He laughed. Well, family first, right? Can let you get too big for your britches. I stared at him, disbelief turning to fury. My parents exchanged glances, silent, uncomfortable, powerless. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But I didn't. I swallowed the fire, the betrayal. I had to. For now. The first crack had formed, the trust I had in my family, in fairness, in this world. It wasn't just about a scholarship anymore. It was about Ian. And one day, I would make him pay. For now though, I sat there chest tight, tears burning, pretending to smile at my lucky cousin. Pretending the world hadn't shifted beneath my feet. Pretending I wasn't already plotting how I would take it back. I couldn't sleep. Not really. My thoughts kept circling, sharp, and relentless. Ayan, his smug face, his laugh. The way he slid into every conversation like he owned it. I remember overhearing them that night, the whispering, Mom and Aunt, voices low but jagged. He charmed them all, Aunt said. The committee practically handed it to him. I froze behind the doorframe, heart thundering. Charmed them? What do you mean? Mom Sep's voice cracked. Ayan? He has a way. He Sep's persuasive, you know? Everyone listens to him. Persuasive, they called it charming. I called it theft, betrayal. I backed away slowly. My hands shook, my stomach twisted. All those nights, all the tears, all the exams, all the essays, meaningless. Abdul worked for it, I whispered, but my voice barely carried. Abdul? Aunt scoffed. Don't be dramatic, dear. You understand one day, sometimes life isn't fair. I slammed my fist into the wall behind me, Pain flared in my knuckles, but I didn't care. Life. Not fair, right? Every family gathering became a battlefield. Every dinner, a trial. I was on trial. My achievements invisible. My sacrifices brushed aside like dust on a shelf. And Ayan, crowned the golden child. Smiling, winning, always. "Pass the rice, please?" I said once at dinner, trying to hold myself together. Ayan smirked. "Oh, do you want some?" I saved a bit for the hardworking one. I wanted to throw it at him. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled politely. My teeth gritted. Mom glanced at me, her eyes flickering with pity, or was it guilt? I couldn't tell. "Abdul, he's just proud of you," she said softly. I laughed. Bitter. Proud. Proud of me while cheering him on. Proud of me while letting him take what I earned. She didn't answer. She never did anymore. Silence. The anger built slowly. A quiet fire. Ayan didn't even have to try. Every little smile, every casual remark, every favor he got. It was a knife twisting. One night, I confronted him in the study. "Tell me the truth," I said, my voice low but sharp. He leaned back, hands behind his head. "The truth?" "Yes. How did you get it? How did you do this?" He grinned, that same infuriating grin. "Do what? You mean charm my way to victory, or just play the game smarter than everyone else?" I felt my hands tremble. "You lied. You cheated. You manipulated everyone." "Manipulated?" "Oh, come on. I just know people. I know how to talk. You know, networks. Influence." "Networks. Influence," I shouted. "I have work, effort, sweat, blood. I earned it." Ayan shrugged, mock innocence plastered across his face. "Earned it? Maybe. But in life, sometimes charm beats sweat." I stormed out, chest heaving, eyes stinging. That night, I realized something terrifying and empowering at the same time. I could let this destroy me, or I could use it. Every whispered conversation I overheard, every glance, every side comment, it was ammunition. Every favor he got, every smile from the committee, every laugh at family gatherings, it was fuel. I paced my room for hours. My chest burned with fury. My mind raced, sharpening, focusing. I could almost taste the plan forming. The betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was a spark. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. Shadows from the lamp danced across the room. I clenched my fists. "This isn't Sukti the end," I whispered to myself. Not by a long shot. The heartbreak still lingered, bitter and raw, but now it was different. Now it had purpose. Ayan thought he won. He thought charm and deceit could overshadow years of real effort. He was wrong. I would rise. Smarter, stronger, unseen yet unstoppable. Every family dinner would be a reminder. Every compliment he received, a challenge I'd meet. And when the time came, I'd reclaim what was mine. Not just the scholarship, not just the victory, but the truth, my worth. I wouldn't beg for it. I wouldn't plead. I'd take it. Quietly, efficiently, devastatingly. The betrayal ran deep, but my fire ran deeper. I stopped answering calls. I stopped smiling at family dinners. I became a ghost in my own home. "Are you okay?" Zara asked one evening, sitting cross-legged on my bed, eyes sharp, scanning me like she could see my insides. I shrugged, pretending. "Yeah, fine, just tired." "Uh-huh," she said, raising an eyebrow. "You've been fine set for weeks." "I don't set by it, spill it." I stared at the ceiling. The dim light cast shadows across my room. "It stuts? Ayan? Everything. Everyone. I feel numb, Zara." "Good," she said. And I blinked at her. "Numb is safe. Numb means they can set touch your fire. But you can set stay here. You need a plan. You need strategy?" I finished for her, voice low. She grinned, sharp. "Exactly. Rage is messy. Strategy lethal." I let her words sink in. Rage had fueled me before. It burned. It consumed. But it hadn't won me anything. Strategy, now that could win. I spent nights tracing every thread, every connection Ayan had used, every friendly smile he'd flashed at the scholarship committee, every favor, every whispered word. I muttered into the dark. Everyone has a weakness. Everyone leaves a footprint. Zara leaned back, letting me think. Dawn set to attack blindly. Watch, listen. Wait, learn. Then strike. I nodded. Silence filling the room. It was my favorite sound lately. Quiet, safe, predictable. Unlike them. Start with the system, she suggested. Every process, every loophole. If he cheated, there's a mark somewhere. A mistake, a pattern. I ran my hands over my notebooks, filled with calculations, contacts, schedules. He thinks he's Sep's untouchable, that he's Sep's smart. But luck doesn't last forever. Connections fade. Smiles lie. Everything leaves a mark. Zara smiled. Exactly. You are already ahead. Emotionally, you cooled the fire. Now you make it precise. I started mapping it all out. The scholarship committee, who they trusted, who Ian charmed, which doors he opened with flattery, which doors slammed in my face without him. Every favor he got, I whispered, tracing lines in my notebook. Every smile, every nod, every weak link. My chest tightened with the thrill of calculation. And patience. Zuri reminded me. Patience is your weapon. Don't set rush. Don't set reveal. Let him think he Sep's one. Let him feel untouchable. I pictured him laughing at some family gathering, thinking he had it all. I clenched my fists under the desk. He had no idea what was coming. I can fight him directly, I muttered. Not yet. I need leverage. I need control. I need patience. And observation, she added. Everything you see here, remember. It's Sep's ammunition. Notes, conversations, weaknesses. All of it builds your edge. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, mind racing. I no longer felt the sharp sting of anger. It had cooled into something darker, more deliberate. I'll wait for the right moment, I said quietly. I'll let him slip, let him get cocky. And then, my voice trailed, but the intent was clear. Zira smiled, standing, and when that moment comes, you be ready. Cold, precise, ruthless. I closed my eyes, imagining the storm I would unleash. Not a wild, chaotic fire, but a calculated avalanche. Silent, unstoppable, and inevitable. The house felt different when I walked back downstairs. I blended into conversations, smiled at family jokes, even nodded at Ian's bragging. They saw the calm. They didn't see the storm building behind my eyes. Everything okay, Abdul? Mom asked one evening, concern in her voice. I smiled faintly. Perfectly fine. And for the first time in weeks, it wasn't a lie. I was fine. Calm, patient, observing, waiting. Ian strutted past, grinning, unaware. My lips twitched in a small, private smile. He thought he had won. He didn't even know the game had changed. I whispered to myself. Quiet but certain. This is instead about revenge anymore. It's instead about justice. My justice. And with that, I began to plan. Every connection, every weakness, every favor, all of it would bend to my will. I no longer burned with anger. I thrived in control. The fire inside me was no longer wild. It was precise, cold, and it would not be denied. The first time I walked into the principal's office, I felt like a ghost, calm and visible, watching everything. Abdul, Principal Khan said, surprised to see me. I thought you were, moving on. I smiled faintly, the kind that hides storms. I am, just interested in how the scholarship fund works. His eyebrows rose. Curious, huh? I leaned forward, voice casual but pointed. It's STUP's underfunded, isn't it, looking for investors? He hesitated. Well, yes. It has been tough, donations are down, trust is thin. I cut him off, soft, calculated. Maybe I could help, learn more, contribute. He blinked, uncertain. You want to invest? I nodded. Just exploring options. Understanding the structure. That night, I couldn't stop smiling. Lightning struck in my mind. Influence from the inside. Power disguised as generosity. Ayalan had taken the scholarship, but I could control the system itself. I started networking quietly, like a shadow slipping through corridors. Every meeting, every handshake, every polite smile, it was a step closer. Abdul, you're young, ambitious. You really think you can make a difference here? A lawyer asked me, during a consultation. I leaned back, letting the confidence show. It's STUP's not about thinking, it's STUP's about doing. Every structure has cracks. Every system has weaknesses. I just need to nudge them in my favor. He studied me, skeptical but intrigued. Nudge in your favor? I let a quiet smile curl my lips. Let steps just say I step am reclaiming what steps rightfully mine. In a way, very efficient. By the end of the week, I had acquired small shares in the educational trust. Nothing flashy, nothing to draw attention, just pieces like placing pawns on a chessboard. At family dinners, Ian bragged about his hard-earned scholarship. I nodded polite, listening. I didn't react. Every word he spilled was fuel. Did you hear? He said one evening, leaning back like he owned the world. The committee even called me exemplary. Imagine that. I smiled quietly. Congratulations, Ian. Truly. His grin widened. You sound detached. Sad? Detached, I said, soft, almost bored. It stuts peaceful. He laughed. Oblivious. Peaceful? Sure, if you stutter okay with losing. I tilted my head slightly. I sumped am not losing, Ianan. Not anymore. The thrill of quiet power was intoxicating. Each share I purchased, each connection I made, each subtle conversation with the board, it all fed the fire inside me, not the wild burning rage anymore, but a controlled, precise blaze. I called Principal Khan again. I've been thinking, I said casually. Maybe I could sit on the advisory panel, help guide the funding decisions. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yeah, could work. Your insight could be valuable. Valuable. My word. My control. My chessboard. I spent hours tracing every favor Aeon had received, every smile, every nod, every weak spot in the system. I built a map, a web, every thread connected to influence, every node an opportunity. Zara would have called it intoxicating, and it was. I felt power in my veins, a delicious pulse of inevitability. Ian walked past me at the library, smug as ever, waving a letter like a trophy. I didn't flinch. I didn't react. I only imagined the storm I was building behind my calm eyes. You look calm, he said, leaning on the table. Relaxed. Boring, almost. I smiled faintly. You should try it. Calmness, it's sucked as underrated. He laughed. Sure, until someone takes advantage of you. I let the silence stretch, letting my words linger, or till you realize calm can be a weapon. He blinked, confused, and walked away. Blissful ignorance. Perfect. Each night, I plotted the next move. Meetings, investments, whispers in the right ears. The system itself would bend to me, quietly, invisibly, and Ian, he remained blind, dancing in victory he hadn't earned, oblivious to the checkmate forming around him. I whispered to myself. A low, deliberate tone, every pawn in place, every weakness mapped, every favor accounted for. Soon it sups mine again, all of it. I didn't feel the rage I used to. It had transformed, cool, calculated, delicious, like tasting betrayal and turning it into power. The storm was coming, and I was calm, patient, ruthless. Ion thought he had won, but he had no idea I had been the player all along. The boardroom smelled like polished wood and stale coffee. I stepped inside, calm, composed. Every smile, every handshake, every nod, they thought I was just another interested family member. Harmless, overlooked. Abdul, one of the board members said, voice casual, unaware. We didn't expect you this early. I smiled. Soft, measured. I like to be thorough. Understand everything before making decisions. Ian wouldn't have imagined I'd be here, wouldn't have imagined that months of quiet moves had put me in a position to influence everything. The meeting began, discussions buzzing. I listened, made subtle suggestions. Nothing overt, just questions, observations, small nudges toward fairness, merit, transparency. Perhaps we should revisit the scholarship criteria, I said casually. It seems some deserving students might be overlooked. A murmur ran through the room. One member raised an eyebrow. Do you think this is necessary? I shrugged. Soft, approachable. It's steps worth ensuring our process is airtight, gives credibility, protects the program's SEP's reputation. Small, innocuous. But the wheels had already started turning. Every suggestion, every question planted seeds. Days turned into weeks. Every policy tweak, every merit-based recognition I quietly implemented, reshaped the landscape. Scholarships were no longer handed out to those with connections or charm. They were earned. One afternoon, I watched Ayan stroll past the administrative office, smug as ever. I nodded politely. "Hey, cousin. How's SEP's the scholarship treating you?" "Perfectly fine," he said, grinning, oblivious. "Top of my class. Everyone loves me. It's SEP's effortless." I smiled softly. "Effortless. Sometimes the hardest victories are quiet, you know." He blinked, confused, and walked away. Perfect. Ignorance made him vulnerable. Inside, I was exhilarated. Each small change, each adjustment, was invisible power flowing through my veins. The students who deserved recognition got it. The ones who rode on charm were subtly sidelined. Every tiny ripple reinforced the system I controlled, quietly, invisibly. One board member pulled me aside. "Abdul, I don't yet know how you do it, but things feel different. Fairer? More merit-based. Did you have something to do with this?" I smiled, tilting my head. "Just someone who believes in doing what sips right, that sips all." She nodded slowly, still uncertain. The look on her face, curiosity, admiration, confusion, was a quiet thrill. They didn't know who was behind it, but I did. At family gatherings, I kept the same calm demeanor, polite, friendly, wronged relative, sympathetic, observant. Each compliment to Ayanan, each laugh at his arrogance, I stored for later. Every small victory in the trust strengthened my resolve. Every favor I quietly reversed made the betrayal taste sweeter. "Abdul, Yusuf changed," Mom remarked one evening at dinner. Concern and pride mingled in her voice. "More confident, stronger." I nodded. Calm, soft. "Isef learned. Sometimes it takes losing something to see the bigger picture." Ayan shot me a glance, smugness fading slightly. "You seem different. Quiet but focused. What's SEP's going on?" I smiled faintly. "Oh, you know, just keeping busy, watching things unfold." He frowned, that tiny shift, hesitation, doubt. I savored it silently. Every minute he wondered, every flicker of uncertainty was a win I didn't need to announce. Even the students started noticing. Whispers about fairness, merit-based recognition, and equal opportunity rippled through the halls. I stayed in the background, invisible, pulling strings. Ayan's name came up less and less in committee discussions. Subtle, surgical. One evening, I walked past the office where he lounged, letters of praise in hand. I leaned against the doorway. Soft smile. Eyes cool. "Enjoying your position?" He smirked, but his confidence was slightly off. Yeah, everything SEP's fine." "Good," I said lightly. "It's STEP's important to savor the moment before things change. You said'll understand one day." He laughed nervously. "Change? What do you mean?" I didn't answer, didn't need to. My silence was a weapon. My calm was a threat he couldn't see coming. Every meeting, every decision, every subtle shift in power was intoxicating. I felt alive, unstoppable. The fire that once burned with rage had transformed into precise, controlled energy, cold, deliberate, ruthless. I walked through the corridors at night, the echoes of my footsteps like the prelude to a storm. The chessboard was set, pawns, knights, queens, all in place. I controlled the narrative now, the system, the rules, the outcomes. And Ayan? He was still dancing in his illusion of victory, blind to the fact that the tide had already turned. I whispered to myself, voice low, deliberate, every favor reversed, every merit rewarded, every weak link exposed. The power is mine now, quiet, invisible, perfect. That night, I looked out the window, city lights flickering. I didn't need anyone to see my triumph. I didn't need recognition. The satisfaction was private, intoxicating. The storm was coming. I could feel it. Azian would stumble, falter, and when he did, he wouldn't know what hit him. Every smile I gave, every polite nod, every subtle influence, they were steps toward inevitable victory. I was patient. I was careful. I was the eye of the storm, and the moment of reckoning. It was closer than he thought. I called Ayan, my voice calm, measured. "There's SEP's a family meeting at the school tomorrow. Be there on time." "Family meeting? At the school?" His tone was casual, smug. "Sure, whatever." I didn't flinch. I smiled faintly. "See you there." The next morning, I arrived early. The sunlight cut through the windows, painting the boardroom in stark light and shadows. Perfect. I could feel the tension already, a delicious prelude. Ian swaggered in, grinning like he owned the place. So, what sets this about? Family stuff? I gestured to the seats. Sit, please. He sat, smirking, confident, arrogant, completely blind. I leaned forward, my hands resting lightly on the polished table, calm, controlled, calculated. You've been enjoying your scholarship, haven't you? I began. My tone was soft, almost conversational. He laughed, easily. Of course, I earned it. Hard work pays off, right? I tilted my head slightly. Earned it, my voice lingered, deliberate. Do you remember how it really came to you? His grin faltered just slightly. What? What do you mean? I let the silence stretch. Long tense. Heavy. The kind that presses on the chest, that makes people squirm. You deceived people, I said finally. Charmed, lied, manipulated. Everything handed to you while I earned it. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, invisible to them because of your tricks. He shifted, uncomfortable. It's set's not like that. You lied, I interrupted. Calm, precise, and life has a way of balancing things. Merit, fairness, no longer optional here, not under my watch. His eyes darted around, searching for support, for allies, for someone who would defend him. But the board members were neutral, professional, watching quietly. I had prepared this stage perfectly. So, you're saying, what exactly? His voice cracked, disbelief creeping in. I leaned back, serene, letting him stew in uncertainty. I am the majority stakeholder now. Policies, admissions, scholarships, all under my influence. Every unfair advantage you Sev relied on, corrected. Every merit ignored, recognized. Every gap you exploited, closed. He blinked, faltering, his smug confidence shattered, replaced with confusion, fear. I didn't need to raise my voice. The silence spoke volumes. You can do this, he stammered, desperation creeping in. I earned respect, recognition. I shook my head, calm, precise. You earned nothing beyond deceit. The respect you flaunted. Empty? Recognition? Reversed. The system is no longer your playground. His shoulders slumped, his mind raced, searching for excuses for some loophole, some defense. Nothing. Karma pressed down on him like a weight he couldn't lift. Yusef underestimated me, I said softly, letting the words sink. You assumed charm and luck were enough. They separ not anymore. The rules have changed, and you is still learning humility the hard way. He opened his mouth, stammered again. But, this is instead. I cut him off with a small, controlled smile. It is. Every action has consequences. Every deceit, a reckoning. I didn't see. Have to yell. I didn't see. Have to threaten. The truth is louder than any scream. He sat frozen, eyes wide, unable to process. The power had shifted completely, invisibly, irrevocably. I let the silence linger. Let the weight of his mistakes crush him slowly. Poetic, I relished the precision, the subtlety. Not a public humiliation, not a spectacle, just justice, served cold. You settle adjust, I said finally, soft, almost kindly. Learn from this. Merit, fairness. They are not just words anymore, they such rules, my rules, and I one step bend them for anyone. He swallowed hard, nodded slowly, defeated, the arrogance gone, the ego bruised, the lesson seared into his mind. I stood, smooth, composed. Now we move forward. The school, the students, the trust, everything is aligned for true merit, and I suggest you focus on earning, not scheming. He looked up at me, stunned, unable to respond. That silence, the recognition of failure, the taste of humility, was my victory. I turned to the board members, casual, friendly. Shall we continue? The meeting resumed, normal conversations, policies, approvals. But I walked with a subtle satisfaction. The power shift was complete. Invisible, precise, undeniable. Ian didn't even realize it was happening until now. Later, when the door closed behind him, I let myself exhale. The fire of rage was gone, replaced by controlled satisfaction. The betrayal had been confronted, the lesson delivered, and the game firmly in my hands. I whispered quietly, to no one, to everyone, justice is silent, but it hits harder than any scream. The storm had arrived. I was calm, steady, victorious. The school felt different now. Halls humming with focus, students buzzing about merit, fairness, opportunities earned not given. I walked through corridors that once belonged to Ian's smug confidence, and now they belonged to me. Quietly, invisibly, completely. But power has a way of revealing what's been hidden. I called my parents into my office, the same place where Ian had faltered. They walked in, cautious, polite, unsure of what awaited. Abdul, you've done a lot, Mom said softly, eyes darting around hesitant. The school, the trust, it's better. I nodded, calm. Thank you, but this isn't set just about the school, it's about accountability. Dad shifted, uncomfortable. Accountability? I leaned forward, letting the weight of the silence press. Mom, Dad, did you really see everything? Or just what you wanted to see? Favoritism, blind spots. Ian was instead the only one who took advantage. Mom flinched. Abdul, what are you saying? I let the pause linger. Your favoritism. Aunt Sep's interference. Small lies that built a house of privilege while I worked, sacrificed, earned, and you turned a blind eye. Dad swallowed hard. We didn't know it was that serious. I shook my head slowly. You did. You chose comfort over fairness, loyalty over truth. And that hurt more than anything Ian did. Mom Sep's eyes filled with tears. We wanted to believe the best in him. In all of us. And that's why this had to happen, I said softly, voice quiet, but cutting. So truth could finally stand. Merit, fairness, honesty. The tension was thick. Words hung in the air, sharp and heavy. They couldn't defend the inaction, the oversight. They only had silence. Then whispers reached me. Board members, quietly reporting subtle confessions from teachers and staff, favoritism, unspoken deals, past manipulations I hadn't known. I listened, carefully, noting every thread. Every revelation strengthened the narrative of betrayal. Every truth added layers to the story that had fueled me. One afternoon, Aunt arrived unannounced. Confident as always, I gestured for her to sit. You've changed everything, she said, trying to sound light-hearted, masking the tension. The school, the trust. Everything that should have been fair is now, I said calm, and with that comes clarity. Accountability. Her smile faltered. Clarity. Your favoritism. Your subtle manipulations. Everyone sees it now, I said softly. I once said punish you, not exactly, but truth cannot be hidden anymore. She stared, shocked. Then something shifted, remorse. Maybe pride cracking. Abdul. I held up a hand. You don't need my forgiveness. You need recognition of what you've done, and a chance to make it right. Some of you can rebuild. Some you just watch. It was bittersweet. Satisfaction mixed with sorrow. Seeing some crumble, acknowledging their mistakes. Seeing others try to rebuild. Family love, loyalty, betrayal, and redemption, wrapped in one complex knot. I took a deep breath, thinking of the nights I had spent strategizing, planning, waiting. Every step, every subtle maneuver had led to this. Control over the trust, merit-based recognition. Ian humbled, and the truth finally unshrouded. Mom Sep's voice broke my reverie. Abdul, you've done something remarkable, but, her eyes searched mine. But you've changed too, we didn't realize. I smiled faintly, quietly. I had to change. I couldn't remain the same child who trusted blindly, who let betrayal define me. I had to become precise. Calculated. Strong. Dad nodded slowly. We see it now, and we are proud. Even if it took this to make us realize. I let that moment linger. A fragile truce, fragile understanding. Forgiveness was a choice. For some I gave it, for others I simply let the weight of truth linger. Board members passed in the hallways, nodding, acknowledging the shift. Some whispered thanks. Some watched wary. Every interaction reinforced the new order. Merit and fairness were no longer optional. They were law. I sat in my office later, quiet, staring at the city lights outside the window. Shadows stretched across the room. I thought of Ian, humbled, unsure, of my parents, confronting blind spots, of my aunt facing truth. I whispered to myself, betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches, shapes, strengthens, and sometimes it rewards those who survive it with precision and control. I closed my eyes, letting the satisfaction settle, unbroken, victorious, hardened, but not hardened against love, only against betrayal. Family was complicated, loyalty was fragile, love was tested, but I had navigated the storm, confronted the betrayers, and emerged whole. I opened my eyes, calm, deliberate. Truth doesn't stop scream, I murmured. It moves silently, but it lands with weight, and nothing escapes it. The school, the trust, my family, the narrative had shifted, I had shifted. And in that silent triumph, I found closure. The day had arrived. The scholarship ceremony, the stage where it all began, where betrayal once knocked me down. Now, I stood at the podium, calm, deliberate, every eye on me. Ayan walked in, confident as always, smiling like he owned the room. Parents, students, board members, all buzzing with excitement, unaware of the storm about to unfold. I nodded politely at him. "Good morning, Ayan." "Morning," he said, grinning. That grin, I let it linger for a beat too long. Calm, observant. The ceremony began. Students lined up. Awards announced, applause, pride, tradition. And then, my moment. I cleared my throat. "Before we proceed with the final scholarship announcement, I want to speak." The room went quiet. Every eye turned to me. "Perfect." Over the past year, I continued, voice steady, controlled, we've made adjustments to ensure fairness. Merit, excellence. No longer shall charm, connections, or favoritism dictate outcomes. From this point forward, all awards are based purely on achievement, dedication, and integrity. Murmurs spread across the room. Subtle, uncertain, the weight of authority in my words was palpable. Ayan shifted in his seat, smirk faltering. Okay?" I let the silence stretch, longer than necessary, comfortable, precise. "Now," I said, "the recipient of this year's top scholarship, the award recognizing not only talent but dedication and honesty, is." I paused, letting the anticipation build. Every eye on the nominees, every heart in the room racing. I glanced at Ian casually. His eyes met mine, expecting praise, expecting validation. Instead, nothing. "Someone who has exemplified the values we now uphold," I continued, calm. "Someone who earned every recognition through effort, integrity, and perseverance." The name rolled out. Another student. Quiet, deserving, overlooked in previous years while charm and influence won favors. Applause erupted. Genuine. Earned. Ian's face drained of color. His jaw tightened. He looked around, confused, desperate for recognition. But there was none to be found, not from me, not from the board, not from the students. You didn't," he stammered, voice cracking. I raised a hand, calm, precise. "No, Ayan, I didn't stet. You stut. You ineligible. Your conduct, your actions in the past, they disqualified you. Merit cannot be faked. Excellence cannot be bought." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The once arrogant student who mocked effort, who flaunted deceit as charm, now powerless, invisible beneath the authority I wielded. He opened his mouth, searching for excuses. "But I deserved." I shook my head softly. "Deserved? Deserved is instead about arrogance. It's instead about work, sacrifice, truth. You had none of these. And now, the system reflects reality." Board members nodded subtly, parents whispered. The weight of accountability settled in the room. Even those who had ignored unfairness in the past, now understood, it was final. Ayan slumped in his seat, humiliation etched across his features. His smirk gone, replaced with confusion, fear, disbelief. He realized too late that his victories were empty, that the game had shifted entirely, invisibly, irreversibly. I let the silence speak for me, calm, precise, satisfying. No need for shouting, no need for theatrics. The moment the justice spoke for itself. After the ceremony, students and parents congratulated the deserving winner. I stayed back, observing. Every smile, every handshake, every whispered word of recognition reinforced what I had built. Fairness, merit, integrity. Ayanan left quietly, head low, powerless. The lesson had been delivered. Poetic, silent, absolute. He had mocked me once, assumed victory was effortless. Now, he witnessed the consequences of arrogance and deceit. I caught a glimpse of my parents in the crowd, eyes filled with understanding, pride, and finally respect. Their blind spots acknowledged, their mistakes corrected, and me, standing, unbroken, resolute. I whispered to myself, voice low, justice doesn't need drama, it doesn't need noise, it moves silently, inexorably, and it always lands. The ceremony ended. Applause faded. Students and parents left. I remained, alone for a moment, savoring the satisfaction, not revenge, not anger, restoration, balance, truth realized. I walked down the stage, calm, deliberate, every step echoing in the empty auditorium. I felt the fire inside me, transformed, no longer rage, but quiet triumph, precision, control. Outside, the world carried on. But inside, the storm had passed. I am humbled, the school's integrity restored, the scholarship system no longer corrupt, and me finally in the place I had earned. I let out a long breath, closing my eyes briefly. This is what happens when betrayal meets patience, when justice isn't step-shouted, but delivered. I opened my eyes, scanning the empty hall, shadows stretching across the polished floor, Ayan's absence a silent reminder of the lesson learned. Merit mattered, truth mattered, integrity mattered. And in that quiet satisfaction, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a legacy. A legacy built not on charm, connections, or deceit, but on effort, perseverance, and earned power. I stepped out, calm, resolute, victorious. The halls of the school felt lighter now, not because the walls had changed, but because I had. I walked past classrooms, students greeting me with smiles I had earned, not demanded. There was no tension, no fear, just respect. I met Zara in the courtyard, leaning against the railing with her ever-present mischievous grin. "Look at you," she said, eyes bright. Master of chaos turned master of order. I smirked faintly. Chaos had its uses. Had, she raised an eyebrow. Sounds like you Sev mellowed. I laughed softly. Maybe, or maybe I Sev learned that the real victories aren't stet about proving someone else wrong. They setter about proving to myself that I can rise above it. Zara Sep's grin softened. You Sep done more than rise. You Sep rebuilt an entire system. I nodded, quiet. Students get fairness now. Merit, recognition. Opportunities I fought for, and so many others, that matters more than any petty revenge. We walked through the corridor together. Students waved. Some stopped to thank me for the new programs, the scholarships, the guidance I offered. Every interaction reminded me that power wasn't just taking control, it was using it responsibly. One student, a quiet boy who had once been overlooked, approached me. "Thank you, sir," he said, shyly, "for believing in me." I put a hand on his shoulder. "You earned it. I just made sure the system saw it too." He nodded, eyes shining. I realized in that moment, this was the real victory, not seeing Ian humbled, not relishing justice. It was this, transforming pain into purpose, betrayal into empowerment. Later, Zara and I sat in my office. The sunlight poured through the window. Warm and calm. "You seem peaceful," she said, almost free. I leaned back, eyes on the city outside. I am. The fire that drove me, its steps still there, but its steps different now, refined, focused. Not anger, but purpose. She studied me, thoughtful. "You've come a long way, Abdul. You took every scar, every betrayal, and turned it into something stronger, something lasting." I let a small smile touch my lips. I had to. If I let those wounds define me, I set still be that girl crying over a scholarship I deserved, but I set him not her anymore. We shared a quiet laugh, the kind that lingers without words. I thought about the journey, the heartbreak, confusion, the sting of betrayal. Every late night, every plan, every calculated move had brought me here, but this piece, it was the reward. The phone rang. A student needed guidance on a scholarship application. I answered, patient, encouraging. Another needed advice on a project. I guided them. Each call, each conversation, each small victory reminded me why I had fought so hard. Zara leaned back. You know, Ian? Sep's probably still figuring out how it all went wrong. But you sir already passed it. That Sep's what makes you untouchable. I smiled quietly, feeling the truth of it. Sep stopped focusing on him, on anyone who tried to limit me. The only measure now is what I create, what I nurture, what I leave behind. Later, as I walked through the empty campus, shadows stretching across the courtyard, I let myself reflect. The scars remained. Yes, faint reminders of betrayal and loss, but they no longer dictated my actions. They were lessons, fuel, guidance. I stopped at the scholarship board, looking at the list of recipients. Each name represented effort, perseverance, integrity, and for the first time, I felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. Not the thrill of revenge, but the triumph of transformation. I whispered to myself, soft but certain, Sev won, not over anyone else, but over every limit they tried to impose, over every expectation that was instead mine, over every fear I once had. The wind rustled through the trees. Students' laughter echoed faintly from a distance. And in that moment I knew, the fire that once burned with anger now glowed with calm strength. Empowerment, wisdom, empathy. Zara Sip's voice called from the courtyard. Come on, Abdul, let Sips get back to work. The future is in Sips going to shape itself. I smiled, stepping toward her, confident, purposeful, free. The ashes of the past were behind me. I had risen, stronger, wiser, unbroken, and finally, at peace. The campus smelled like rain and freshly cut grass. A soft wind carried laughter from classrooms and courtyards. I walked slowly, deliberately, watching students move with purpose, curiosity, ambition. A young teacher approached, bright-eyed, holding a folder. Sir, I just wanted to thank you. The new mentorship program, it's changing everything for them. I smiled quietly. Good, that sips the goal. Opportunity doesn't just appear. We create it here. She nodded, hesitant but proud. I can feel it. They actually believe in themselves now. I leaned against the railing, watching a group of scholarship recipients debate a project with passion. Their energy, their drive, their integrity. It wasn't just impressive, it was proof that fairness, merit, and guidance could reshape lives. Zara came up beside me, sipping her coffee. You ever think about how far its steps come? All the time, I said softly, eyes on the students. Every time I see them excel, it reminds me why I fought, why I planned, why I waited. She smiled. And what about him? I didn't need to ask. We both knew the name. Ayan, a chapter closed, a lesson learned. He seems irrelevant now, I said calmly. A reminder, not a threat. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in seeing someone fall, it's in building something so strong that they simply fade away. She laughed lightly. Silent power. I like that. You've always been good at it. I chuckled softly, a faint echo of all those long nights plotting, planning, watching, learning. I had to learn it. Betrayal teaches things anger cannot. Patience teaches things fury cannot. Strategy teaches things pride cannot. A student approached hesitantly. Sir, may I ask you something? Of course, I said, crouching slightly to meet their eyes. How did you stay strong, after everything? I looked at them, quiet for a moment. The truth was simple, yet heavy. I stopped letting the betrayal define me. I turned the pain into purpose, the anger into strategy, the hurt into guidance. You don't get to choose what others do, but you do get to choose what you become. Their eyes widened, and they nodded slowly. I hope I can do the same. You will, I said softly, because it's not about revenge anymore. It's about legacy, what you leave behind, who you lift while building yourself. I wandered into my old office later, now refurbished with new memories, letters, trophies, photographs. Each one a symbol, a relic of the journey. I traced a finger over an old scholarship acceptance letter, the one that had started it all. My chest tightened slightly, a brief echo of old pain, but it was gone now, replaced with pride, serenity, and a quiet fire that guided without consuming. Zara joined me, leaning on the desk. You ever miss the chaos? I shook my head. No, chaos is fleeting, legacy lasts. The students laughed outside, debating ideas, challenging each other, striving for excellence. I let myself smile fully for the first time in a long while, not smugly, not for revenge, for the pure satisfaction of seeing life thrive because of the principles I had fought for. Sir, one of the scholarship winners called. Do you think we can make a difference out there? I looked at them, calm, steady. You already are, and yes, you can. Every choice, every effort, every act of integrity, it builds something far greater than a momentary victory. It builds a legacy. I glanced around the room, then out the window at the campus. The trees swayed gently. Shadows moved with the sun. Every detail reminded me of the journey, the heartbreak, the strategy, the revenge, the triumph. Every step had led to this quiet, enduring satisfaction. Years from now, I said to Zara, voice soft but certain, when they tell this story, let it be about resilience, not ruin. About strength, not spite. About growth, not grudges. She nodded, smiling knowingly. And what about you? I paused, letting the wind brush my face, sun warming my shoulders. I'll be here, I said, voice steady, watching, guiding, ensuring that what we built doesn't crumble, that what I created continues, not for revenge, not for recognition, but for them, for fairness, for merit, for the future. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the energy of ambition and hope, I finally felt complete. Ion was a memory, betrayal was a lesson, and I finally fully was the legacy.